I'm Catherine Corbett, and I'm 31 years old. My parents hijacked my birthday and turned it into an ultra-exclusive private equity dinner at Cipriani Wolsel Street, packed to the brim with investors and self-proclaimed old money elite. Right in the middle of the event, my father picked up the microphone and carried out a public disownment. A waiter brought a heavy, cream-colored envelope to my table. Inside was a notarized notice removing me from the family trust. It bore my father Preston's signature, my mother Carolyn's signature, and my sister Gabrielle's signature, all witnessed by the family's lead attorney. Carolyn didn't lower her voice. Her words cut through the air. "This was your choice, Catherine. Now, we've made ours." Meanwhile, my sister Gabrielle held up her phone, aiming the camera right at my face to capture my reaction like she was hunting for viral social media content. I didn't beg, I didn't argue. I just calmly took the letter, folded it up, and stood up to leave. Up until that exact moment, they had completely ignored my husband, who was sitting right beside me in an understated navy suit, keeping quiet the entire time. They had no idea who he actually was, let alone how fast he could dismantle everything my family took pride in and assumed was untouchable. The Corbett family didn't just have money. They had Wall Street legitimacy. Corbett Capital Partners was a private equity firm in New York's financial district, managing a portfolio worth $890 million, backed by 28 core employees and a client list that read like a Forbes index. A top 20 New York private equity firm, my father Preston loved to emphasize at dinners, as if there were a massive gulf between 19th and 20th place. Their office occupied the 42nd floor of a glass skyscraper, just 3 blocks from Wall Street. Floor-to-ceiling corner windows overlooked New York Harbor. The conference room featured custom mahogany tables, and the original artwork on the walls cost more than most people's homes. My mother Carolyn ran daily operations as managing partner. She was an iceberg queen in Chanel suits, the kind of woman who could turn a simple greeting and a handshake into an implicit threat. They lived in an $8 million, 3,200 square foot penthouse at 72nd and Park Avenue on the Upper East Side, featuring front row views of Central Park across all 4 seasons. On top of that, they owned a $4.5 million oceanfront summer estate in the Hamptons with private beach access and 10 guest rooms, built specifically to entertain the weekend political and business elite, who measured their net worth in helicopter minutes from Manhattan. "We don't invest in emotions, Catherine," my mother told me 7 years ago during a talk she called a professional intervention. "We only invest in returns. You actually chose a few worthless books over a multi-billion-dollar family enterprise." That was 7 years ago. She thought I was just going through a rebellious phase, but that phase never ended. Following the family's non-negotiable directive, I was supposed to study finance at Cornell University. In 2012, I enrolled with a 3.8 GPA, fully expecting to make them proud. For 3 whole years, I sat in lecture halls listening to talks on derivatives, market efficiency, and leveraged buyouts, taking notes in the high-end leather notebook my mother gave me for Christmas. Then came October 2016, the fall of my senior year. I walked into the campus library, intending to do a quick review. While there, I noticed a graduate student in library and information science helping an elderly woman use the computer catalog. He was patient and kind, and the way he explained the Dewey Decimal System made it seem like the most important thing in the world. Something clicked inside my chest. 2 weeks later, I changed my major. Barely an hour after the registrar processed my request, an email from my mother hit my inbox. Subject: "Your future, Catherine." The body read, "Your father and I are deeply disappointed. Becoming a librarian with your family background? Absolutely unacceptable. We will not fund this foolish mistake. Mother, not love mom, just a cold, businesslike mother." Tuition for my final year at Cornell was $58,000. I took out $80,000 in student loans to finish my degree. They didn't show up for my graduation. At 9:47 a.m. on graduation morning, my mother sent a text. Contact us when you're ready to get serious about life. I didn't reply. That was the first time I realized staying silent was a form of survival. Orch. My sister Gabrielle graduated 3 years ago with an MBA from Wharton. Before she even walked across the stage to flip her tassel, she had an offer letter from Corbett Capital in hand. Starting salary was $180,000, along with a junior analyst position tailored specifically for her. On her first day of work, a $95,000 Porsche Cayenne wrapped in a red ribbon was parked outside the building. She had 45,000 followers on Instagram and treated being a lifestyle influencer as a side hobby. Her feed was packed with champagne brunches and business casual outfits, tagged with He's Boss Babe and Family Business. She rented a one-bedroom apartment in Chelsea for $4,800 a month, paid for by the family trust, the very fund my name had been quietly scrubbed from back when I betrayed them at Cornell. Last year, we had a family dinner at Le Bernardin, a top 3-star Michelin restaurant in New York. Swirling her third glass of Bordeaux, Gabrielle looked across the table at me with a perfectly practiced smile. Sweet on the surface, toxic underneath. Katie, bless your heart, are you still stamping books for minimum wage? When are you going to get a real job? My actual salary was $55,000 a year, which wasn't minimum wage. But whenever Gabrielle saw a prime opportunity to throw an insult, facts didn't matter. I didn't correct her. I just cut my salmon into smaller pieces and changed the subject. Her Instagram story updated that night with a looping video of the Corbett Capital lobby. The marble floors gleamed under the lights. The caption read, "Family Business Dance, your 9 to 5. Location tag, where legends work. 127 likes, 8 comments. The comments were all Queen is killing it, goals, and teach me your ways." I saw it. I closed the app and went to bed early. What else was I supposed to do? May 18th of this year was my father's 61st birthday. We were back in a private dining room at Le Bernardin. Tasting menu, $850 per person. 12 seats arranged around an oval dining table covered in white linen. I was in seat 11, right near the staff service door, close enough to hear the kitchen chaos, and far enough that table conversation flowed around me like water over rocks. At 8:30 p.m., my mother stood up with her champagne glass and announced that Corbett Capital had just closed a $240 million deal. Everyone raised a glass. Thunderous applause. My father beamed. Nobody mentioned that I had been promoted to senior librarian the week before. Nobody asked. After knocking back 3 glasses of scotch, Preston leaned back, swirled his glass, and looked at me with an expression somewhere between pity and contempt. "You know what gets to me the most, Katie?" His voice carried that specific slur born of expensive liquor and expensive disappointment. "You used to have potential." Key word, used to. Past tense. Now, you're just content wallowing in mediocrity. I set my fork down and nodded. I'm content with my choices. And that's the biggest problem. He downed the rest of his drink. At 9:15 p.m., I excused myself, claiming I had an early shift at the library on Saturday. Technically, that was true. I opened at 10 a.m. But mostly, I had to get out of that room before something deep inside me shattered completely. Walking toward the subway, I caught my mother's voice floating out from the partially open door. She was talking to Gabrielle near the coat check, completely unaware I was still within earshot. "We need to finalize the trust paperwork. Strike her name out for good. She isn't one of us anymore." I froze on the sidewalk of 32nd Street, as a spring rain started to fall and taxis splashed through puddles. Carolyn's words echoed in my head. She isn't one of us anymore. I didn't go back in. I didn't confront her. I just wrapped my cheap coat tighter, walked toward the subway, and let the rain soak through my inexpensive flats. From that moment on, I knew the formal severance would come sooner or later. I just didn't expect them to do it in public. Tuesday morning, 8:45 a.m. I unlocked the staff entrance of the Queens Public Library's Flushing branch at 4117 Main Street. It was a 1964 concrete building in desperate need of renovation, covering 12 square feet with 85,000 books and 8,500 active cardholders. Most of them were immigrants, Chinese families from Flushing, elderly Korean grandmothers practicing English pronunciation, Latino students writing homework on beat-up computers held together by prayers and the IT department, and South Asian parents looking for citizenship exam prep guides. My desk was on the second floor by the window, overlooking Main Street. On it sat a single personal photograph, a picture of Theo and me smiling at New York City Hall when we got married 3 years ago. There were only 12 guests at that wedding. Gabrielle didn't come. At 10:30 a.m., Mrs. Chen walked up to my desk. She was a 65-year-old Chinese immigrant who had attended my ESL classes for 14 months straight. In her hands, she held a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, its pages soft from repeated reading. "Miss Catherine," she said slowly, picking every word with a thick accent, "I finished the whole book, in English. First time in my life." She placed the book in my hands like a sacred gift. "You changed my life." I felt something open up in my chest, the good kind of crack that lets the light in. "You put in the hard work, Mrs. Chen. I just helped you find the door." She smiled with tears in her eyes and turned to return the book. Around noon, my manager Denise walked over. She was 58, had been a librarian for 32 years, always wore a cardigan with a cat brooch, and possessed endless patience. "Some foundation bigwig is visiting the branches today," she said, checking her schedule. "Something about a grant program. They might stop by here." I nodded, already turning back to my computer to process book holds. What I didn't know then was that Theo's team was doing field research for a massive $50 million grant initiative, and they had already decided where that funding was going. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m., I taught ESL in the basement classroom. 24 folding chairs, a 1998 whiteboard, and a flickering fluorescent light. Over the past 5 years, the library budget had been slashed 3 times, so I paid for whiteboard markers out of my own pocket. There were 18 students ranging from age 22 to 70. Maria from Honduras worked for minimum wage cleaning houses and came to practice interview English. Mr. Park from Korea learned to read so he could help his grandkids with homework. Then there was a Syrian family who had just arrived in the US, learning how to ride the subway and master the English alphabet at the same time. They would bring homemade food to share, samosas, empanadas, and hand-rolled dumplings, all prepared by hands that had crossed oceans to get here. We'd eat together during 15-minute breaks, laughing over mispronunciations and celebrating small victories. Last week, Maria sent me an email. Subject: "Thank you, Miss Catherine. I practiced interview English. You taught. I got new job, $18 an hour. My daughter very proud. You are an angel. Maria R." At $18 an hour, that was the most she had ever made. Her daughter could stay in school instead of working weekends. All of it happened because Maria learned to say, "I am reliable and detail-oriented," without stumbling. I printed that email and put it in a drawer at home next to 46 similar letters from students telling me I changed their lives. I never showed those letters to anyone, not even Theo. After class on Thursday night, I gathered my teaching materials, handouts I designed myself, and practice worksheets printed on the library's ancient copier. On the desk, I found a note with handwriting trembling from old age. "You taught me to read. Now I read to my grandson. You gave me a voice, Mr. Park." I folded it carefully, put it in my coat pocket, and felt its weight all the way home. By 9:15 p.m., I was back at our apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It was a 4-story 1952 walk-up, 480 square feet for $2,100 a month, taking up a quarter of my take-home pay. In winter, the radiator clanked, the shower water pressure was terribly low, and the single window faced a brick wall. But it was mine. It was ours. It wasn't built on trust funds or family connections. We paid rent on time every month with money we earned ourselves. Porch. Theo was already home, making pasta in our tiny 6 by 4 foot kitchen. As I walked in, he turned with a relaxed smile. "How was your day?" He wasn't just being polite. He was genuinely asking, genuinely caring. "Mrs. Chen finished Charlotte's Web," she cried. "That's wonderful." He meant it. I could hear it in his voice, a warmth my family never showed when talking about my work. Porch. We ate pasta at our IKEA dining table and chatted about small things. In that worn-out apartment, I felt a stronger sense of belonging than I ever did in that Upper East Side penthouse. After dinner, Theo went to take a shower. His laptop was left open on the coffee table where he had been working before I got home. The screensaver had just timed out, revealing an email preview. Porch. 50 million in Queen's Library Initiative Project. Board approval confirmed. Announcement date set for August 24th. From A. Rivera at queensbp.gov. I stared at the screen. 50 million. Queen's Library. August 24th. That was my birthday. I had always assumed Theo did general consulting work for a library foundation. Porch. When we first met, he had mentioned it vaguely, calling it educational philanthropy. This had to be a project he was managing. Maybe he helped write the grant proposal. I didn't read any further and closed the laptop. I trusted him and didn't want to pry into his privacy. August 24th felt far away. I had no idea that night would change everything. Porch. 4 years ago, on November 12, 2020, the New York Public Library held a fundraising gala at the Stephen A. Schwartzman Building. I attended as a representative for the Queens branch. We were encouraged to network even though I hated the superficial small talk forced upon us at donor events. By 7 p.m., wearing a $90 Macy's dress, I instantly felt out of place. Porch. Near the main reading room, there was a photo exhibit. Public libraries. A photographic essay. The black and white photos showed readers from different eras and backgrounds all seeking refuge in the same space. I reached for an exhibit catalog at the exact same moment someone else did. Our hands touched the cover at the same time. "Sorry," he said, pulling back. Porch. He wore a navy blazer over jeans, and his brown eyes looked remarkably sincere, a rare sight in a room full of pretension. "That's fine, you go ahead." I started to step back. "We can look together." He opened to the first page. "I'm Theo. Catherine, right?" We talked for 2 full hours, completely forgetting about the gala. Porch. He told me he believed libraries were the heart of democracy, the one place where anyone could access knowledge equally regardless of wealth. Right then I thought, finally, someone who gets me. At 9:43 p.m., we swapped phone numbers. The next morning, he texted to invite me for coffee. 6 months later, we were engaged. Porch. We got married at City Hall with just 12 guests, close friends, and a small circle of Theos. I didn't invite my family. I didn't want to give them another chance to express their disappointment in me. What I didn't know at the time was that Theo had arrived at that gala with Angela Rivera, who was the deputy borough president of Queens back then and is now the borough president. Porch. She had seen Theo notice me in the crowd and saw the shift in his expression. "Go talk to her," Angela whispered to him. "She doesn't know who I am," Theo replied. "Keep it that way," Angela said with a wink. "It's your secret." Then they split up in the crowd. I never saw them together and never knew they were acquainted. Some secrets are kept out of love. Porch. Theo always worked from home, or at least that was my understanding. Laptop, phone calls, occasional meetings in the city. Educational consulting, he would say, whenever asked. I figured his salary was around $80,000 to $90,000 a year. Comfortable, but hardly rich. And perfect for our simple life. He drove a dark green 2016 Subaru Outback with 128,000 miles on the odometer. Porch. Last year, I gently suggested getting a slightly newer car, just casually mentioning it without pushing. "It still runs," he said. "Money isn't everything." He bought Uniqlo hoodies, shopped at Trader Joe's, rode the subway, and insisted on splitting rent 50-50 with me, even though I suspected he could afford more. I appreciated that. Porch. I loved the equality, the partnership, and his refusal to make me feel like a charity case who needed taking care of. 6 months after we married, I borrowed his laptop because mine crashed during a software update. As I checked my email, I noticed an open browser tab, Forbes 30 Under 30, Social Impact. Without thinking, I clicked it. Porch. The page loaded to a professional headshot of Theo wearing a tailored suit I had never seen before. The caption underneath read, Theo Ashford, founder Ashford Literacy Foundation, 2.1 billion endowment. I stared blankly at the screen. 2.1 billion. Hearing the apartment door open, I realized Theo was back from the grocery store. I closed the tab quickly, my heart hammering. I didn't bring it up. Porch. Maybe it was someone with the same name? A coincidence? The photo looked like him, but photos can be deceiving. I forced it out of my mind. We were happy, so why complicate life with questions? Looking back, I realize I simply didn't want to know. Knowing the truth meant confronting why he kept it hidden, and questioning whether our entire relationship was built on a lie. So I chose ignorance. Porch. I chose trust over digging for answers. Back in November 2022, 2 years ago, I brought Theo to the penthouse for a family dinner. I had been trying to stall, but my mother's passive-aggressive emails had gotten impossible to ignore. When do we get to meet this mystery husband of yours? Porch. The penthouse dining room seated 14, lit by a crystal chandelier, with an original Rothko on the wall and Central Park glowing in the winter night outside. Theo wore khakis and a button-down shirt. I had told him business casual was fine, and to me he looked perfect. But standing next to Preston in a tailored Tom Ford suit and Gabrielle in a Burberry dress, he looked decidedly average. Porch. During the appetizers, my father asked the inevitable question. So, Theo, what do you do? I work in educational philanthropy, Theo said, his voice calm and steady. My mother cut in before he could elaborate. Oh, so, non-profit, she said, using a tone that sounded like he had just admitted to being unemployed. Yes, ma'am. Porch. Throughout the entire first course, Gabrielle didn't even lift her head from her phone. She just kept scrolling through Instagram, occasionally showing my mother a photo and whispering comments I couldn't hear. Theo excused himself early at 8:50 p.m., saying he had a morning meeting. We didn't even stay for dessert. Porch. After he left, my mother took a sip of red wine and gave me that look. The one that signaled an incoming piece of criticism wrapped in fake concern. Catherine, sweetie, you could have done so much better. I know it's hard for a librarian to meet successful men, but honestly, he drives a Subaru. I love him. Love doesn't pay for a high-end retirement home, sweetie. Porch. On the subway ride home, Theo had taken a cab ahead to prepare for his meeting. I replayed the dinner over and over in my head. How quiet he was, and how tight his jaw clenched when my mother mentioned nonprofits as if referring to a disease. I'm sorry they made you feel uncomfortable, I told him when I got home. Theo was on the couch working on his laptop. Porch. He looked up with an unreadable expression. No need to apologize. They showed me who they really are. He paused. Katie, if they ever truly hurt you, and I mean severely, tell me. Promise me. It was just mean words. I'm used to it. Promise me. I promise. 3 months later, when the disownment letter arrived, I broke that promise. Porch. I didn't tell him until the night before the dinner, carrying the weight of that heavy envelope alone for 3 whole weeks. On August 1st at 2:30 p.m., while I was processing book returns, Denise handed me an envelope that had arrived that morning. Porch. Heavy, expensive cream cardstock, with my work address written in calligraphy across the front. Miss Catherine Corbett, Queens Public Library, 41 Swansea Main Street, Flushing, NY. Not Mrs. Ashford, no married name. It was deliberate. I opened it in my office. Gold-embossed logo. Corbett Capital Partners. Porch. The invitation itself was printed on museum-grade paper, 300 GSM, the kind people use when renting out private islands for weddings. Preston and Carolyn Corbett cordially invite you to the Corbett Capital Partners 25th Anniversary Investor Dinner. August 24th at 7 p.m. Cipriani, Wall Street. Black tie required. RSVP by August 10th. Porch. Clipped to the corner was a handwritten note in my mother's distinct, sharp, angular handwriting that never wasted a drop of ink. Catherine, your birthday happens to fall on this day. What a coincidence. Try to dress appropriately. If you insist on bringing your husband, go ahead. Mother. Not mom, no love, just mother. As formal as a business memo. Porch. I read it 3 times, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. 24 days until my birthday. 24 days until I turned 31. And they were treating my birthday as a mere byproduct of a corporate event. What a coincidence, she wrote, as if my birth were an inconvenience that happened to align with their business timeline. That night, I showed the invitation to Theo. Porch. He looked at it, then at the note, his face completely unreadable. Do you want to go? It's my birthday. Maybe they're trying to, extend an olive branch, Katie. He placed the invitation on the coffee table. They sent this to your workplace and they called me the husband you insist on bringing. That is definitely not an olive branch. I knew that. Of course I knew. Porch. But a part of me, the 7-year-old still desperate for parental approval, wanted to believe it. If I don't go, they'll say I burned the bridge, that I'm bitter, that I lack manners. Theo sighed, pulling me into his arms. All right, we'll go. You don't have to force yourself. No, I need to go. If you're walking into that room, I'm walking in with you. Porch. You won't even wear a tuxedo, I said with a weak laugh. He smiled faintly. Deal, navy suit, that's my final offer. I laughed, feeling a little better knowing I wasn't alone. August 15th, 10:07 a.m. I was drinking coffee in the break room when my phone buzzed with an email from the events team at Corbett.com. It wasn't from my mother but an event coordinator. Porch. Subject. Seating arrangement for August 24th. Miss Corbett, you are seated at table 18. Guest +1. Dress code. Black tie. No exceptions. That was it. No looking forward to seeing you. No happy early birthday. Just cold logistics. I tapped the PDF attachment showing the seating chart. A complex diagram color-coded by category. Porch. Tables 1 through 8. VIPs, investors, and core family members in red dots. Tables 9 through 17. Business partners and associates in blue dots. Table 18. Miscellaneous guests and staff overflow in gray dots. I zoomed in on table 18, located in the furthest corner from the stage. Listed attendees. Catherine Corbett +1 plus 6 TBDs. 6 TBDs. They hadn't even decided who to seat with me. Porch. I was a filler. A last-minute addition put at the overflow table meant for people who didn't fit the curated guest list. Scrolling through the full list of 155 guests, I spotted Angela Rivera, the Queensborough president, at table 3, Jeffrey Hunt, CEO of Penguin Random House, at table 5, along with multiple Fortune 500 CEOs, senators, and New York socialites regularly featured in the Times. Porch. And then there was me at table 18, under miscellaneous. Denise walked into the break room and caught my expression. Are you okay? I locked my phone. I'm fine, just family stuff. She squeezed my shoulder without prying, which I appreciated. On August 17th, the text barrage began. Gabrielle, can't wait for the party. It was her first message to me in 3 months. Porch. I stared at the phone, instantly on guard. Gabrielle, what are you wearing? Please don't wear that brown dress from Easter. I didn't reply. Gabrielle. Mom asked me to remind you that the dress code is black tie, not librarian chic. Still, no reply. August 18th, 11:32 p.m. Gabrielle, by the way, maybe save your speeches. Porch. Last time you talked about your students, people literally walked away to grab drinks. Between August 17th and 23rd, she sent 8 texts total. Every single one was a tiny scratch, designed to make me feel small, unwelcome, and out of place. I didn't reply to a single one. I just watched, felt my stomach tighten, and cleared the notifications. Theo noticed on August 20th. Is she texting you? Porch. Yeah, just ignore it. What is she saying? I flipped my phone face down on the table. Nothing new, just Gabrielle being herself. August 23rd, 9:15 p.m. The final text arrived. Gabrielle, see you tomorrow, big sis. It's gonna be an absolute show. Nos gas. I should have seen what was coming. I couldn't sleep that night. Porch. Staring at the ceiling of our tiny bedroom, listening to Theo's steady breathing beside me. I got up for a drink of water at 2:30 a.m. Theo's phone was charging on the kitchen counter, its screen lighting up with a notification preview. Angela Rivera. Theo, confirming your attendance tomorrow. We need final numbers for the announcement. It's going to be an incredible moment. The announcement. Porch. What announcement? I stared at the message, guessing it was about the library grant. Theo was consulting on a major project, and I had seen that $50 million grant proposal in his email. Tomorrow was my birthday. Tomorrow was the dinner. Tomorrow, there would be an incredible announcement. I set the phone down without prying further. Returning to bed, I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Porch. I lay there as a feeling of dread settled in my chest like concrete. August 23rd, 10:30 p.m. Our Brooklyn apartment felt even smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as I prepared my dress for the next night. Black, simple, knee-length, bought for $180 at Nordstrom Rack after saving for 2 months. Porch. I told myself it was an investment for future events, like library fundraisers or potential job interviews. Theo's navy suit hung on the closet door next to it. A good suit, well fitted without being flashy. We looked at them hanging side by side, our armor for tomorrow night. We don't have to go, Theo said from the bed. He'd already said it 3 times today. We have to. Porch. Katie, if I don't show up, it just proves them right. It proves I can't handle their world, that I'm too sensitive, too resentful. I sat down beside him. I need to show them I'm doing fine and that their opinions can't destroy me. He pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. That's how I know you are. Porch. Strong people question themselves. Only weak people are arrogant enough to never reflect. I breathed in his familiar scent. Laundry detergent and the subtle cologne he wore, maybe twice a year. I felt a little better. I'm proud of you, he said softly. What you do matters, more than any deal they're closing tomorrow. I wanted to believe him. Porch. I chose to believe him, even with doubts creeping into my mind. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood up. I have to take a work call. He stepped out onto our fire escape, what we always jokingly called our balcony, even though it was just rusted metal overlooking the brick wall of the building next door. Porch. Through the window, I caught his voice, muffled yet distinct, professional, and formal. Yes. Confirming the announcement tomorrow night. The 50 million. Right, I'll be there. No, we'll handle this delicately. She doesn't know yet. I'll tell her afterward. She doesn't know yet. My stomach plummeted. What didn't I know? Still, I had promised myself not to pry, not to interrogate. Porch. Trust was the bedrock of our marriage. If Theo was keeping something from me, he had his reasons. 5 minutes later, he came back inside and offered a soft smile. Sorry about that. Everything okay? Yeah, just finalizing details on a project. He kissed my forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. We went to bed. Porch. He fell asleep within minutes, while I stayed awake until 3 a.m., staring at shadows on the ceiling, wondering what secret I didn't know yet. My 31st birthday. When I woke up at 7:15 a.m., Theo was already up, brewing coffee and making pancakes in our tiny kitchen. My birthday tradition. He sang Happy Birthday, horribly off-key, making me laugh despite the knot in my stomach. Porch. 31 suits you, he said, sliding a plate across the IKEA table. I tried to eat, but after forcing down half a pancake, nausea hit me. Are you all right? Just nervous, we could still cancel. I already sent the RSVP. At the library, focusing on work was nearly impossible. I went through the motions of checking in returned books, offering hollow smiles to patrons while my mind drifted. Porch. At noon, Mrs. Chen walked up and handed me a small wrapped package. Happy birthday, Miss Catherine. Inside was a handmade woven bookmark featuring intricate blue and gold threads. It must have taken her hours. Mrs. Chen, you really didn't need to. You give me so much. This is just a small thank you. I hugged her, feeling tears well up in my eyes, forcing them back before they could fall. Porch. At 4 p.m., I clocked out early. Denise gave me a hug, wishing me a wonderful birthday. I almost laughed out loud. Wonderful was the last word I'd use to describe tonight. I got home at 5 p.m. and started getting ready by 5:30 p.m. The black dress, minimal jewelry, small earrings, no necklace. I didn't own expensive jewelry anyway. I left my hair down with light makeup. Orch. At 6:15 p.m., Theo stepped out of the bathroom wearing his navy suit. He looked handsome in that understated way that drew me to him in the first place. No flash, just a steady presence. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." We took the subway to Wall Street, stepping out at 6:50 p.m. into the muggy summer evening air. Orch. Cipriani was 3 blocks away, and we walked past people arriving in luxury cars, wearing tailored suits that cost thousands. Meanwhile, we arrived on foot, the subway sweat still drying on our backs. Theo grabbed my hand as we approached the entrance, giving it a firm squeeze. "I'm right here with you," he whispered. "No matter what happens inside." Orch. I squeezed back, afraid to make a sound lest my voice betray me. At 6:58 p.m., we stepped into the lion's den. At 7 p.m., Wall Street looked like a set from a movie about people who never worry about rent. Soaring vaulted ceilings, marble columns, and dripping crystal chandeliers filled the space. Orch. The building used to be a bank, which felt fitting. The currency here wasn't just cash, but status. We bypassed valet parking, enduring the unabashed disdain from the attendants as we walked up from the subway station. A woman in a Chanel gown stepped out of a Bentley right behind us, her heels clicking on the marble like sharp gunfire. Orch. Inside, the grand ballroom opened up into 15,000 square feet of old money luxury. Tables were arranged in a strict hierarchy, each serving as a status symbol. Right at the front near the stage were tables 1 through 8, decorated with white orchids, champagne flutes, and crystal glasses catching light like liquid gold. Orch. Scanning the room, I located table 18 in the furthest corner, a full 40 feet away from the stage. It was the only table decorated with supermarket-quality carnations, slightly wilting in the heat, set with water glasses instead of champagne, and holding 8 seats with only 2 place cards. Neither had my name on it. Orch. An usher appeared holding a clipboard, wearing an earpiece and a practiced smile. "Name? Catherine Corbett?" Her eyes darted down the list. "Ah, table 18. In the corner." She pointed without bothering to look up, ushering us away with practiced efficiency. Orch. We walked clear across the ballroom, passing table 1, where my mother stood in a silver gown that likely cost more than my annual salary, entertaining guests. She caught sight of me and smiled. The kind of smile a predator gives right before closing in. At table 3 sat Queensborough President Angela Rivera, deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. As we passed, she looked up, her eyes widening slightly when they landed on Theo, before she quickly looked away. It was strange. At table 5 was Jeffrey Hunt, CEO of Penguin Random House, gesturing animatedly with 2 other executives, according to the place cards I could see from there. We finally reached table 18. 6 people were already seated, none of whom I knew. Mid-level employees, I guessed, invited out of obligation rather than importance. Hardly any of them looked up as we sat down. The woman next to me wore a name tag that read Jennifer Martin, Analyst. She offered a faint smile. "Corporate events, right? Always so awkward." "Always," I agreed. Theo sat to my left, quietly taking in our surroundings. That familiar tightness returned to his jawline, the same look I'd seen at our family dinner. I rested my hand on his knee under the table, and I felt him relax slightly. A waiter carrying a tray of champagne passed by, skipping our table entirely and heading straight for table 17. Jennifer noticed it too. "I guess we're the tap water table." She chuckled, though the sound was hollow. I looked at the center of the table. 6 carnations, grocery store quality, maybe 49 cents a stem. Every other table had orchid arrangements easily worth $200 each. The message was loud and clear. "You're here, but you don't matter," by 7:15 p.m. The room filled up, the noise swelling with laughter centered on wealth and connections. Porch. I watched my father work the room, shaking hands and clapping shoulders while my mother stood by his side, elegant and cold. Gabrielle stayed close to the stage, camera in hand, snapping content for Instagram. Not one of them looked toward table 18. At 7:25 p.m., my mother walked past our table. Not to visit us, but on her way to greet someone more important. Porch. She paused, looking down at me as if just noticing my presence. Catherine. Not sweetie, not happy birthday, just my name. Hi, Mom. Her eyes swept over my dress, down and then back up. The evaluation took 3 seconds but felt like hours. Then she turned to a woman wearing Harry Winston diamonds next to her, speaking just loud enough for me to hear. This is the librarian I mentioned. My daughter. She paused before, daughter? A slight, deliberate hesitation, as if the word left a bad taste in her mouth. The woman glanced at me, offered a polite smile, and immediately looked away. My mother walked off without a backward glance. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably beside me. Family, huh? Ouch. Theo found my hand under the table and held it tight. At 7:30 p.m., Gabrielle materialized beside us, a Sony A7 IV camera hanging from her neck like a trophy, phone in hand as backup. She wore a red dress that cost more than my monthly rent, beaming her signature influencer smile, all teeth, zero warmth. Katie, fake enthusiasm, pure performance art. Happy birthday, big sis. She held up her phone and started recording. Say hi to Instagram. She turned the camera toward Theo. And this is, sorry, what was your name again? Theo, he said coldly. Right, Theo. She giggled to a friend hovering behind her. Another influencer type in a designer dress with an existential dread look. Can you believe they took the subway? Her friend laughed, cruel and smug. Gabrielle leaned in, still filming. So, how do you like the party? Pretty fancy for a Tuesday, right? I know technically it's your birthday, but this party is actually for the firm. 25 years of excellence. She turned the camera back to herself. This is family legacy. Something people like you will never understand. She spun on her heel and walked off, her thumbs flying across the screen to edit the footage. I felt my face burn, humiliation rising in my throat. Deep breath, Theo whispered. I did as he said, in through the nose, out through the mouth, counting to 5 in my head. The people at table 17 saw the whole thing, and I caught the pity in their eyes. Pity felt so much worse than mockery. At 7:35 p.m., waiters began serving appetizers. Tables 1 through 17 received seared scallops beautifully plated with microgreens and surgical drizzles of sauce. Table 18 received house salads. Iceberg lettuce served with a tiny cup of cheap ranch dressing. Jennifer poked her lettuce with a fork. I've been to prison weddings with better food. I almost laughed. If the situation hadn't been engineered so precisely to humiliate me, I really would have. The man sitting across from me, whose place card read David Sullivan, Jr. Associate, leaned forward. First time at a Corbett event? First time being invited. Yeah, they're like this. They build class structure into every detail. Last year, table 19 didn't even get chairs. They had to stand and eat. Are you serious? I wish I were. He stabbed a tomato viciously. Welcome to corporate feudalism. I looked around, taking in the carefully constructed hierarchy on display. White orchids versus carnations, champagne versus tap water, seared scallops versus iceberg lettuce. Every single detail delivered one clear message. You are lesser. At table 1, my mother raised her glass for a toast. The room grew quiet. From 40 feet away, I couldn't make out her words, but applause and laughter erupted from the crowd. At table 18, we didn't clap. We couldn't hear a single thing worth celebrating. At 7:40 p.m., I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Everyone at our table had a name card, white cardstock with gold embossed lettering. Jennifer Martin, David Sullivan, Robert Chen. Even 2 late arrivals had place cards waiting for them, except me, except Theo. The 2 spots intended for us were completely blank, as if we were nameless, disposable nobodies. Jennifer noticed me staring at the table setting, No place card? Apparently not. Wow, that's cold. She looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm used to it. Theo leaned in close to my ear. Orch. We can leave right now. Not yet, Katie. Not yet. I didn't know why I was staying. Maybe it was pride, maybe stubbornness. The same part of me that switched majors despite my parents' threats. The same part that married Theo despite their disapproval. I wasn't going to let them win by driving me out. But God, I wanted to run. Our table was barely 15 feet from the kitchen doors. Porch. The brushed stainless steel doors swung open repeatedly as servers came and went with trays. Every time they opened, noise spilled out. Clattering plates, shouted orders, the raw chaos of a fully operational commercial kitchen. Table 1 listened to classical music from a string quartet near the stage. Table 18 listened to 6 scallops for table 9. Hurry! The sauce is breaking! Porch. David looked at me. Immersive dining experience. This time I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. The absurdity was overwhelming. Theo didn't laugh. He just watched the ballroom with that calm, watchful focus I'd seen before, as if cataloging every detail in his mind. At 7:50 p.m., Gabrielle returned, this time without her friend. Just her, phone raised and recording. Porch. She strolled over to our table, making a show of her approach. Hey, Katie, quick question, she said, leaning against my chair, filming down at my face. How does it feel to be at a real business event? Must be pretty different from the library. I looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the cruelty and performance in her eyes. Porch. She was only 26, yet she had already mastered using her birthright privilege as a weapon. It's different, I said quietly. I bet, she laughed. I mean, look at this place. Cipriani. Do you even know how much it costs to book this space? No. 50 grand just for the venue. She panned the camera around. But I guess when you're celebrating excellence, you don't cheap out, right? Porch. She walked away, thumbs already flying across her screen as she uploaded the video. Tagged. Posted. The surrounding tables fell quiet, everyone watching as witnesses to my humiliation. I felt something inside me go numb, a self-preservation mechanism kicking in to shut down feeling before the pain deepened. Theo's hand remained firmly wrapped around mine, an anchor in the storm. Porch. At 7:45 p.m., my father stood up from table 1, stepping toward the stage with the confidence of a man who had never doubted his place in the world. He unclipped the microphone from its stand. Good evening, everyone. His voice echoed crisp and clear through the sound system. Thank you all for coming tonight. Polite, expectant applause filled the room. Porch. Before we begin the main program, I have a bit of family business to take care of. He smiled, attempting to look benevolent and paternal. As some of you may know, tonight happens to be my daughter Catherine's birthday. Heads turned as people tried to locate me, and I felt 155 pairs of eyes lock onto table 18. I froze. Theo's grip tightened instantly. Porch. Catherine, could you stand up for a moment? I didn't move. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body locked up. You don't have to stand, Theo said gently. But I stood anyway. Refusing to stand would only give them more ammunition. Look, she lacks basic manners. I stood up slowly, feeling every stare in the room piercing through me. Porch. There she is. My father's voice carried something I couldn't quite name. Maybe pride, maybe mockery, or both. Today she turns 31, my eldest daughter. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, the same cardstock as the invitation. Heavy, expensive. Catherine, I have something for you. My stomach dropped into a abyss. A waiter appeared at my elbow. Porch. He'd like you on stage, miss. I looked at Theo. His face was frozen like stone, his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitching. I'm coming with you, he said. No. I didn't know why I said it, but I didn't want him tainted by this mess, dragged into their spectacle. Stay here. I walked the 40 feet from table 18 to the stage, the longest walk of my life. Past table 17. Porch. Past table 16. People whispered, pulling out their phones. Past table 9. Past table 8. Getting closer. My mother sat at table 1, champagne glass held frozen at her lips. Unmoving, beautiful, cruel. At table 3, Angela Rivera looked confused and concerned, almost rising before settling back down. Orch. I reached the edge of the stage and walked up the 3 steps, my heels clicking loudly against the wooden floorboards. My father held out the envelope, smiling for the cameras. Gabrielle was filming, of course, and several guests pulled out their phones to record the moment. Happy birthday, Catherine. Orch. I took the envelope, feeling its weight, too heavy for a birthday card, too formal for a gift card. With trembling hands, I opened it. 2 sheets of paper with legal letterhead. Corbett Capital Partners, Legal Department. My eyes scanned the first paragraph, asterisk notice of disownment and removal from family trust. The words blurred. I blinked, forcing my vision to refocus. Orch. Notice is hereby given that Catherine Marie Corbett is formally removed from all family financial instruments, trust funds, inheritance provisions, and corporate holdings effective immediately. This decision stems from irreconcilable differences in values and life choices contrary to the legacy of the Corbett family. Signatures. Preston Corbett, Carolyn Corbett, Gabrielle Corbett. Orch. Witnessed and notarized by James Patterson, lead counsel. Dated August 24, 2024. My birthday. I read it twice, then 3 times, but the words didn't change. The entire hall fell dead silent, as if holding its collective breath. My mother's voice echoed from table 1, clear, sharp, and dripping with theatrical flair. This is our gift to you, sweetie. Orch. I looked up to see her standing now, champagne glass raised high as if making a toast. You made your choice, Catherine. Now we've made ours. 155 people watched as countless phones recorded the scene. Gabrielle remained on the left side of the stage, pushing the camera into my face to capture the exact moment I broke. Orch. Yet in that moment, a profound stillness settled in my chest. Not pain, not shock. Just absolute, crystal clear clarity. I had spent 7 years trying to win their approval, hoping they would see value in my choices. Hoping they'd realize that teaching Mrs. Chen to read mattered just as much as closing a $200 million deal. They would never understand, and this letter proved it. Orch. I folded the pages carefully and precisely, placing them back into the envelope. Thank you for making this official, I said, my voice steady, calm, and detached. I didn't offer an explanation, a defense, or a plea. I simply turned around and walked off the stage. The room remained dead quiet, a stunned silence like the moments right after a crash before the screaming begins. Orch. I walked back toward table 18, taking one step after another, keeping my breathing even. Don't break down. Don't give them the satisfaction. As I approached, Theo stood up and started walking toward me, meeting me in the aisle between tables 12 and 13. He didn't ask a single question. He just wrapped his arm around me and turned us toward the exit. Orch. Just then, a voice called out, stopping us in our tracks. Theo? It was a woman's voice coming from table 3, filled with absolute confusion. Theo Ashford? We froze. Angela Rivera stood up. The Queensborough president, dressed in her sharp suit, stared at him as her intelligent eyes shifted rapidly from confusion to recognition, and then to pure shock. Is that? Orch. She stepped away from her table and walked toward us. Theo, I didn't expect to see you here tonight. I thought you weren't attending until tomorrow's official event for... She stopped, looking at me, then at Theo, and back at me as realization washed over her face. My God, you're Catherine. Catherine Corbett. I stared at her. Do we know each other? Orch. I know your husband. She looked at Theo, then toward the stage where my father stood frozen, then at my mother before looking back at us. Does your family have any idea who he is? No, Theo said quietly. They don't. The dead silence in the room dissolved into whispers as people turned to watch the interaction. At table 5, Jeffrey Hunt stood up. Orch. The CEO of Penguin Random House stepped toward us with firm, decisive strides. Theo Ashford, he said, extending a hand. I thought that was you, but I certainly didn't expect to see you at table 18. He let out a baffled laugh. What are you doing over in that corner? Theo shook his hand. Accompanying my wife. Jeffrey's eyes fell on me. Your wife? Porch. Wait. He glanced at the stage, then back at my father. Corbett? Are you related to them? More people stood up and more phones came out. I heard someone at table 7 whisper, Google Theo Ashford right now. I watched as the energy in the ballroom inverted in real time. Whispers turned into louder chatter, and chatter turned into blunt questions. Someone at table 9 blurted, My God. Porch. That's Ashford from the Literacy Foundation. Table 6. $3.1 billion. You've got to be kidding me, table 4. He was sitting at table 18? Why on earth was he put at table 18? My mother's face went completely pale. My father stepped down from the stage, utterly bewildered, while Gabrielle lowered her camera, staring at us in horror. Porch. Theo looked down at me, his eyes asking for my permission. I nodded softly. Let them know. Over 20 phones were raised across the ballroom, their screens glowing like fireflies as people typed frantically and Wei Tamai's loaded search results. I watched it unfold in real time as the truth spread like wildfire. Porch. At table 7, a woman gasped and held her phone out to the man next to her, who immediately pulled out his own device to search. Table 11. Forbes 30 under 30, social impact list. That's him. Table 14. A $3.1 billion endowment? Are you serious? Angela Rivera remained at our side, her eyes darting between Theo and me as if trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. Porch. You're married to Catherine Corbett, she stated, her voice thick with disbelief. And she pointed toward the stage, they just disowned her in public. Yes, Theo said, his tone flat and icy. Jeffrey Hunt pulled out his phone not to search. He already knew, but to scroll through something. Theo, I had no idea you were coming tonight. Porch. If I had known. He glanced toward table 18, taking in the cheap carnations and water glasses. Good Lord. A crowd gathered around us, forming a tight circle born of shock and curiosity. A man from table 4 spoke up. You're with the Ashford Foundation, right? The Literacy Initiative? Yes, our school district uses your digital literacy platform. It's been revolutionary. Porch. Theo acknowledged him with a brief nod. Someone at table 8 read aloud from their phone screen. Ashford Literacy Foundation, $3.1 billion endowment. Partnerships with Amazon Kindle Education and Google Digital Libraries. Board member of the New York Public Library and the Library of Congress Foundation. Forbes' most influential under 40. He paused. Good grief. Porch. Gasping echoes rippled from table to table, phone to phone. On a screen near table 6, a headline from Business Insider showed clearly. Ashford Foundation surpasses $3 billion mark, becoming nation's largest private educational endowment. On another phone at table 10, a press release from the Library of Congress displayed a photo of Theo shaking hands with a senator. Porch. My father finally forced his feet to move, stepping toward us with a pale face. Carolyn followed close behind, her champagne glass gone, her heels clicking harshly against the marble floor. What is going on here? Preston demanded, trying to project composure, though his voice wavered. Jeffrey turned to face him. Porch. You just publicly disowned the wife of one of the most influential philanthropists in the country. It was a flat statement that let the facts speak for themselves. Preston stared at Theo, really looking at him for the first time. You run a foundation? I founded it, yes. Porch. How big is it? Preston stopped, unable to bring himself to ask the question outright. Doing so felt too crass even for him. Someone answered for him anyway. A woman at table 9 chimed in, $3.1 billion. It's right here on Forbes. Carolyn let out a sound, not a gasp, but a sharp intake of air as if the wind had been knocked out of her lungs. Porch. Near the stage, Gabrielle lowered her camera completely, her other hand scrolling frantically through her phone. I watched her face cycle through disbelief, dread, and panic. She had been filming my humiliation for her 45,000 followers, tagging the videos with family drama and birthday fail. Now her fingers flew across the screen as she frantically deleted them. Porch. But it was too late. Screenshots live forever on the internet. Her friend standing beside her showed Gabrielle her own phone screen, whispering something I couldn't hear. Gabrielle's face drained of color as she looked over at me, calculating how to spin the narrative, how to turn this into engagement, how to exit gracefully. She couldn't, and she knew it. Porch. Angela Rivera stepped forward, placing herself between my parents and us like a physical barrier. Preston. Carolyn. Her tone shifted into full official borough president mode. I'm not sure you realize what just happened here. Clearly, there has been a misunderstanding. It is a misunderstanding, Carolyn rushed to say. Angela cut her off. This isn't a misunderstanding. Porch. You publicly humiliated your daughter in front of investors, politicians, and business leaders. You handed her a legal disownment notice as a birthday gift. She paused. And you did it completely unaware that her husband manages more philanthropic funding than most foundations in this country. Preston tried to regain control. We knew nothing about this. Porch. And that is the point. Angela's gaze cut like a knife. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You judged entirely based on appearances. She looked at Theo. He drives a Subaru and works in education, so you assumed he was broke, didn't you? A heavy silence fell over the room. He's on the board of the Library of Congress. He funds literacy projects across 40 states. Porch. He partners with tech giants in educational technology. Angela's voice echoed through the hall. And tomorrow. She paused, looking at Theo. May I? Theo nodded. Tomorrow, we were scheduled to announce the largest single donation in Queens Public Library history. $50 million from the Ashford Literacy Foundation. Angela let the number settle in the air. Spearheaded by Theo Ashford. Porch. And your daughter, Catherine, was set to be named Director of Community Engagement. The entire ballroom fell completely silent. Set to be? Someone echoed softly. Angela turned to me. Catherine, that position is yours if you want it. Nothing that happened tonight changes that. I stood speechless, my mind unable to process the numbers. $50 million. Director, my library, my students. Porch. All of it happening while my family assumed I was stamping which books for minimum wage. Jeffrey Hunt stepped forward, turning his phone around so my parents could see the screen. It was a Time magazine article from last year featuring a photo of Theo at a White House event under the headline, Time 100 Most Influential. Health and Education. Porch. Jeffrey read aloud. Theo Ashford, 36, has revolutionized how public education is funded in America. His Ashford Literacy Foundation, holding over $3 billion in endowment, brings digital resources to underserved communities across the nation through partnerships with state governments, tech companies, and grassroots organizations. He lowered his phone and looked at Preston. Porch. That's the man you sat at table 18 tonight. The man you decided was worthy of tap water instead of champagne. Porch. More phones stayed out, displaying article after article as evidence mounted. A Forbes interview with Theo on why libraries matter, a Harvard Kennedy School case study on the Ashford model, and a New York Times op-ed authored by Theo on public education as the foundation of democracy. That kind of weight shifted everything. Porch. It wasn't just about money. It was about social legacy, influence, and the kind of work that truly transforms lives and leaves a lasting footprint. Everything my family claimed to value most: success, influence, and lasting societal impact. Theo possessed in absolute abundance. He just felt no need to perform for an audience. Porch. A woman in her 50s stepped away from table 3, radiating quiet authority and effortless elegance. Her name tag read, Patricia Morrison, philanthropy consultant. Theo, I had no idea you'd be here tonight. She shook his hand warmly before turning to me. You must be Catherine. Theo talks about you constantly, about your work with ESL students and the literacy initiatives you've built. Porch. She turned toward my mother. I've served as an advisor to the Ashford Foundation for 5 years. For every major decision, Theo always asks, what would Catherine do? She is his moral compass and his constant inspiration. Patricia offered me a warm smile. The way he speaks about you, it's how most people speak about their heroes. My throat tightened. Theo had never told me any of this. Porch. He never mentioned how often he spoke about me to others, or that I was woven so deeply into his work. My mother looked as though she had been struck across the face. We had no idea, because you never bothered to ask, Patricia said calmly. You saw a librarian and instantly concluded she was poor and unsuccessful. She gestured around the grand ballroom. Arch. Half the people in this room have donated to causes Theo champions. We all know his work, and we all respect his reputation. Over at table 2, a United States senator stood up and walked over. Ashford, good to see you, he said, shaking Theo's hand. My team has the draft ready for that education reform bill we discussed last month. Will you take a look at it? Orch. The senator naturally picked up on the tension thick in the air. Am I interrupting something? Just some family matters, Theo said quietly. The senator glanced at parents, a spark of recognition crossing his face. You're Preston from Corbett Capital, right? We met at a fundraiser. Preston managed a stiff nod. Fascinating. The senator's tone cooled instantly. Orch, I take it you had no idea Theo was part of your family. We're just finding out, Preston stammered weakly. I watched the social hierarchy reshuffle in real time. Investors from Table 4 stood up and approached Theo. Not as a couple, but specifically to connect with him. Suddenly, he was the most valuable, influential person in the room. Orch. The delicate hierarchy my mother had spent decades cultivating crumbled to pieces. The very people she had seated near the stage, the ones sipping champagne amidst white orchids at the epicenter of power, were abandoning her table to gather around table 18. The overflow table in the far corner, reserved for nobodies, had become the focal point of the entire ballroom. Orch. Gabrielle tried to slide into the crowd, raising her camera again in a desperate attempt to salvage content from the disaster. Patricia Morrison stepped directly into her path. Put the camera away. I'm just documenting. Put it away. Patricia's voice turned to iron. You've done quite enough. Gabrielle lowered her camera, shrinking back toward the edge of the stage. Orch. Without her phone and her audience, she was just a 26-year-old girl who had weaponized her privilege, only to watch it backfire completely. My father cleared his throat, trying to force a smile as he attempted to slip his corporate mask back on. Theo, I think there's been a massive misunderstanding here. That letter, it was just, we simply didn't have all the information. Orch. You had all the information you ever needed. Theo's voice was soft, yet utterly devastating. You had 7 full years to see Catherine choose purpose over money. You had 3 years to see how happy she was in a marriage you dismissed as beneath her. And you had tonight watching her show up even when she knew how you would treat her. He paused, letting the silence heavy up around us. Orch. That was all the information you needed. Preston turned ash gray. The real issue isn't that you knew nothing about me, Theo continued. It's why you never once bothered to know her. Dead silence fell over the surrounding crowd. Jeffrey Hunt let out a sound that was almost a scoff. Well said. My mother made a calculated attempt to soften her tone. Catherine, sweetie? Orch. Maybe we can talk about this in private. This is all getting so... No, my voice surprised even me. Loud, clear, and unyielding. You made this a public spectacle, so let's keep it public. Carolyn's composure cracked, revealing a flash of raw panic underneath. She was losing control of the narrative, the room, and the power dynamic, and she knew it. Orch. Angela Rivera stepped onto the stage, picking up the microphone my father had abandoned. She tapped it twice, the sound echoing through the hall. May I have everyone's attention, please? The room went still, every eye shifting back toward the front. I apologize for the unexpected interruption to tonight's program. Angela offered a warm, polished smile. Orch. Given the circumstances, I believe this is the perfect moment to share an announcement originally scheduled for tomorrow. She paused, allowing expectation to build in the air. Orch. As Borough President of Queens, one of my highest priorities is educational equity. Ensuring that every child, regardless of zip code or family income, has equal access to quality resources. Her voice resonated with genuine conviction. Libraries are the bedrock of that equity. They are living, breathing embodiments of democracy. Low murmurs of agreement trickled through the room. Which is why I am profoundly honored to announce that the Queen's Public Library system will be receiving the single largest private contribution in its history. She let the words hover for a moment. $50 million. Audible gasps broke out. Genuine astonishment, even in a room full of Wall Street elites accustomed to massive numbers. Provided by the Ashford Literacy Foundation, this funding will be distributed over 5 years to build 3 brand-new library branches in underserved communities: Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst. It will establish digital literacy labs, expand ESL programs, and train 200 educators. Angela's gaze found mine across the room. Additionally, it establishes a brand-new leadership role, Director of Community Engagement. This individual will oversee all outreach initiatives, ensuring funds flow directly where they are needed most, serving as the bridge between the library system and the communities it serves. She paused again. Catherine Corbett has been formally offered this position, and she has accepted. Angela continued, her voice commanding total focus. Some of you may not be familiar with Catherine's work, so allow me to enlighten you. She referenced her notes, a prepared speech she had carried all along. For 7 years, Catherine has served at the Flushing branch of the Queen's Public Library. She teaches free ESL classes twice a week, serving over 200 immigrant families every year. A literacy curriculum she developed raised adult reading comprehension scores by 43%. Data, facts, undeniable evidence. She mentors students from 18 different countries, people working as cleaners, taxi drivers, and night shift workers who still show up to her classes because they know education is their path forward. Catherine doesn't just teach them English. She teaches them how to advocate for themselves and navigate systems built to overlook them. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, forcing them back with everything I had. Last year, one of her students, Maria Rodriguez from Honduras, leveraged the business English. Catherine taught her to secure a promotion from cleaner to administrative assistant. Maria's daughter can now stay in school instead of working weekends. Angela looked my mother directly in the eye. That is impact. That is value. That is the work Catherine chose. And Theo recognized it, valued it, and built a $50 million initiative around her dedication. Applause began to break out, hesitant at first, starting with a few people before expanding into a powerful wave. Genuine applause, born not of obligation, but of deep respect. My mother stood frozen in place, her face drained of color, her champagne glass left abandoned at table 1. Angela wasn't finished. The directorship includes a salary of $95,000, full health benefits, and a dedicated professional development budget. Catherine will have direct decision-making authority over the allocation of those funds. $95,000, nearly double my current salary. It wasn't private equity wealth, but it was money I earned through meaningful work. Groundbreaking for the first new branch takes place in 3 months in Jackson Heights, a neighborhood where 45,000 residents currently share a single library facility. Angela smiled. Catherine selected the location herself, knowing exactly where the need was greatest. The applause swelled. Jeffrey Hunt stood up, clapping loudly, and others quickly joined in until a full standing ovation swept through the room. At table 18, Jennifer Martin stood up, clapping enthusiastically with a wide grin. Damn right! Table 17 rose, then, table 16, the momentum rolling back toward the stage. Meanwhile, the VIPs at tables 1 through 8 remained seated, including my family. They couldn't stand and they couldn't clap. To do so would mean admitting they had been entirely wrong. Angela raised a hand, bringing the room back to a listening hush. I want to clarify one more detail. Her tone turned serious. This grant was finalized 3 weeks ago. The announcement was set for tomorrow at Queensborough Hall, a modest press event. 3 weeks ago. Porch. Before the invitation was mailed, before the seating chart was finalized, and before the disownment letter was drafted. Theo insisted we wait until after tonight. Angela looked toward him. He said, I want Catherine to choose this role for the right reasons. Not because she's running away from something, but because she's stepping into her purpose. Porch. I looked at Theo, whose calm, steady gaze met mine. He had known for 3 weeks. He knew about the grant, the position, everything, and held his peace so I could face my family one last time and choose my own path freely. Theo didn't need to be here tonight, Angela added. He knew how you would treat him and how you treated Catherine. Yet he came anyway to support his wife. She lowered the microphone, stepped off the stage, and walked straight over to me. Catherine, the position is yours. Starting September 1st, if you'll have it. I couldn't speak, so I just nodded repeatedly. Angela pulled me into a hug, whispering in my ear, You earned this, don't let anyone make you feel small. Conversations erupted across the ballroom as guests openly reassessed the situation in real time. Did you see her mother's face? She had no clue, someone at table 6 whispered. 50 million to libraries. That's actually really moving, came a voice from table 9. At table 14, they disowned her at table 18 while her husband controls 3 billion. You couldn't script this. Preston stood near the stage, paralyzed. Carolyn stood beside him, her champagne glass back in her hand, trembling visibly. Gabrielle was nowhere to be seen. Scanning the room, I spotted her near the exit, frantically deleting videos on her phone. But it was far too late. Screenshots were already circulating everywhere. Look at her Instagram story. Someone at table 7 shouted, Porch. The video mocking them taking the subway went viral. 20,000 reposts in 15 minutes. Gabrielle's face collapsed. Leaving her designer dress and forgotten camera behind, she sprinted toward the restroom. A man at table 2 in his 60s, impeccably dressed and a frequent face on financial news, stood up and approached Preston. We need to talk. Privately. Porch. Preston nodded blankly and they stepped to the side. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched Preston's face turn from pale to ash gray. 2 minutes later, the man walked out the exit without saying goodbye. Moments later, an investor from table 4 followed him out, then another from table 5. By 8:20 p.m., 7 key investors and business partners had left early. A clear, unspoken statement. Porch. Jennifer Martin leaned in close. That guy from table 2 is their largest investor. Brought them $200 million last year. She whistled softly. Your family just lost him, how do you know? Body language. Plus, the look on his face was pure disgust. The ballroom had split into distinct camps. Porch. At tables 1 through 8, family members and close associates huddled defensively in damage control mode. At tables 9 through 17, business partners talked in hushed tones, glancing at my parents as they weighed their options. And everyone else hovered around table 18, around us. Theo handled questions about the Ashford Foundation, the Queen's Initiative, and the literacy projects with grace. I stood by his side, taking it all in. Patricia Morrison brought me a glass of water. Are you all right? I don't know. You will be, she squeezed my shoulder. You're free now, whether you realize it yet or not. Over at table 3, Angela was openly on the phone, likely coordinating with her press team. The story would be everywhere by morning. My mother caught my eye across the room, staring at me with a complex mix of shame, anger, fear, and calculation. I met her gaze calmly without looking away. She was the one who broke eye contact first. A woman from table 11 stepped over wearing a designer gown and pearls, the embodiment of the old money elegance my mother always strived to emulate. Walking right past my parents without a glance, she approached me directly. Catherine, I'm Eleanor Hartford. I serve on the board of the Public Library Foundation. She shook my hand firmly. I've heard about your ESL initiatives through Theo, and I would love to discuss potential collaborations. I'd be honored. Eleanor glanced at my mother before turning back to me, her voice easily carrying across the space. True class isn't about how much money you have. It's about what you do with it. Your husband understands that, and clearly, so do you. She left the words hanging and walked away. My mother heard it, as did everyone at table 1. It mirrored the subtle cruelty my mother had inflicted on me for years, except this time, it was public, reversed, and absolute. I expected to feel triumphant, but mostly I just felt exhausted. By 8:25 p.m., the room was still buzzing with phone screens flashing everywhere. The event had derailed completely from its original purpose. I looked at Theo. I need to say something. You don't owe them an explanation. I know, this is for me. I walked back up the 3 steps to the stage, the same path I had taken 40 minutes earlier to receive the disownment letter. Tapping the microphone, the sound echoed, bringing the room of 155 people to a hush, including my family. I looked at my parents, then at Gabrielle standing near the back, her makeup ruined from crying. For 7 years you told me I wasted my potential. My voice was calm and steady. You said I ruined my future, chose poverty over success, and brought shame to this family. Dead silence filled the hall. Tonight you put that down on paper. A notarized legal document disowning me in front of your investors, your peers, and everyone who matters in your world. Preston tried to speak. Catherine, I'm not finished. He went quiet. I want you to know that I am grateful. I let the words settle. Grateful that you finally made your position so crystal clear. I spent 7 years hoping you would see value in my work, hoping you'd understand that teaching Mrs. Chen to read so she could help her grandson mattered, or helping Maria Rodriguez learn English so she could support her daughter mattered. Images of Mrs. Chen's bookmark, Mr. Park's note, and Maria's email flashed through my mind. I was wrong to expect that. You will never see it, because you measure value strictly in dollars. My work doesn't generate profit, it serves people. I looked around the room at Angela, Jeffrey, Patricia, and everyone who had stood up in support. I won't waste another moment hoping for your approval. The families I serve see my worth. My husband sees it. And every single person in this room, except you, sees it too. I turned back to my parents. That disownment letter is official, and I accept it. I won't contest it or fight it. Consider it my birthday gift to you. Freedom from the daughter who chose books over billions. My mother's face fell as real emotion broke through her wall, but it was too late. However, let me make one thing clear. My voice hardened. You are no longer welcome in my life. Do not show up at my new job, do not come to my library branches, and do not attend my events. You made me a stranger, and I am making that permanent. Preston took a step forward. Catherine, can we talk? No, we can't. I lowered the microphone with a heavy thud. I walked off the stage, right past my parents and past Gabrielle, who was now weeping openly. I headed straight for Theo. Let me take you home. He took my hand, leading us towards the exit. Applause started at table 18 as Jennifer Martin stood up to clap, followed by tables 17, 16, and 14. By the time we reached the doors, 40 people were on their feet applauding, not for the drama, but for something real. Angela Rivera, Jeffrey Hunt, Patricia Morrison, and Eleanor Hartford joined in, as did investors who had paused in the lobby on their way out. Even partners at tables 6 and 7 stood up, choosing their side. Tables 1 through 5 remained seated, my family anchored to their spots. We walked into the lobby and out into the muggy summer night air. Theo hailed a cab, and we stepped inside, heading home. As we pulled away, I saw my mother run out of the building in her heels, calling my name. I didn't look back. By the time we got home, I had 47 missed calls. 12 from Carolyn, 8 from Preston, 15 from Gabrielle, 6 from unknown numbers, and 6 from reporters. News traveled fast. Texts flooded my lock screen. Carolyn, Catherine, please answer. We need to talk. Carolyn, this is ridiculous. You're being childish. Carolyn, your father is deeply upset. Call him back, Preston. Let's discuss this like adults. Gabrielle. Oh God, Katie, I am so sorry. Please, please, please answer. Gabrielle, I didn't know. I swear, Gabrielle, everyone is attacking me online. Make it stop. Porch. I set the phone face down on the counter without replying, leaving them unblocked for now just to see how desperate they would get. Theo brewed chamomile tea, placing a cup in front of me. How are you feeling? Ask me tomorrow, I smiled weakly. Fair enough. At 11:30 p.m., an email arrived from family attorney James Patterson's, the same man who had notarized the disownment letter. Porch. Subject: urgent legal matter. Immediate attention required. I opened it and read the first paragraph. Miss Corbett, I am writing on behalf of Preston and Carolyn Corbett regarding the document handed to you tonight. Upon further review, procedural irregularities were identified that may render the notice invalid. The Corbett family wishes to arrange a meeting to modify or rescind the document. I read it twice and laughed out loud. They wanted to take it back. I showed the email to Theo, who shook his head. Of course they do. Procedural irregularities translates to, we didn't realize your husband was wealthy. Do you want a lawyer to look at it? He asked. No, I deleted the email. I'm keeping that letter. It's the best gift they ever gave me. At 11:47 p.m., Carolyn called again. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded strained, struggling for control. Catherine, it's your mother. I know you're upset, but you have to understand we were protecting the family legacy. We had no idea about Theo's situation. This changes things. We should sit down as a family. There's been a misunderstanding and perhaps we acted hastily. Call me back tonight, please. Protecting the family legacy. No apology, no accountability. Just excuses. I saved the voicemail for the record, then blocked her number. Then I blocked Preston, Gabrielle, and the family attorney. With every blocked contact, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Are you sure? Theo asked. Completely. He wrapped his arms around me in our tiny 480-square-foot kitchen, where I felt richer than I ever had in that Upper East Side penthouse. At 11:58 p.m., Theo's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Morrison. You need to see Gabrielle's Instagram comments. He showed me the screen. Gabrielle's video mocking me at table 18 had been screen recorded and gone viral, pulling in 12,000 comments and counting. Top comment, 8,500 likes. Imagine bullying your sister who teaches immigrants while your family disowns her in the name of values. Second comment, 6,200 likes. Mocking her sister for taking the subway when her brother-in-law funds libraries across 40 states. The irony. Third comment, 5,800 likes. That's what happens when privilege meets cruelty. Catherine 1. Gabrielle had deactivated her account, but the screenshots were permanent. I closed the app feeling a quiet sadness. She was only 26 and could have chosen kindness, but she had learned from the worst possible teacher. On Friday morning, August 26th, I woke up to 17 messages from friends and colleagues, all linking to a New York Times Metro article. Asterisk Queens Library Seekers, historic $50 M, grant amid family drama. I read it over coffee with Theo sitting quietly beside me. The article was objective, sticking strictly to the facts, which were damaging enough on their own. The Ashford Literacy Foundation announced a $50 million gift to the Queens Public Library System. However, the revelation unfolded at a private dinner after Catherine Corbett Ashford was publicly disowned by her family. According to attendees, Preston Corbett presented his daughter with a notarized disownment agreement at a birthday celebration, unaware her husband controlled a $3 billion educational endowment. The piece included statements from Angela Rivera, photos of me with my students, and an official statement from Theo's foundation. The final line noted, representatives for Corbett Capital Partners declined to comment. They were hiding behind media silence, a classic damage control tactic. While the Times remained measured, page 6 showed no restraint, asterisk elitist family's 3B blunder. The article featured contrast photos of me at table 18 with carnations alongside my parents at table 1 with champagne and orchids. On Saturday, August 27th, three major institutional investors pulled $180 million from Corbett Capital Partners, citing alignment of values and reputational concerns. Preston issued a defensive PR statement claiming the events were mischaracterized, but the Wall Street Journal ran a piece noting, private equity firm faces investor outflow following public family dispute. Yet the messages that mattered most came from my students. Mrs. Chen emailed Saturday morning. Miss Catherine, I saw the news. You are a hero. I always knew you were important. Now the whole city knows. So proud. Love, Mrs. Chen. Attached was a photo of her family smiling with their library cards. Maria Rodriguez left a voicemail. Miss Catherine, I told my daughter, that's the woman who changed our lives, and now she's going to help so many more. We are so proud of you. Thank you for everything. Mr. Park left a note at the front desk. You gave me a voice, now you use yours. Proud of you. Mr. Park. The 47 notes in my drawer had become 50. That was what truly mattered. Not the articles, the investor losses, or the crumbling social standing of my family, but the real lives impacted by the work. That was worth more than any trust fund. 1 week later, Saturday, August 31st, 9:47 a.m., a text arrived from an unknown number. Catherine, it's Mom. Please don't delete this. I'm using a new number because you blocked me. We need to talk. Can we have lunch at Les Bernardines today at 1 p.m.? Just the two of us. No lawyers, no Preston. Just mother and daughter, please, Mom. For the first time in 7 years, she signed off as Mom instead of that cold, formal mother. How telling. I showed the message to Theo. Are you going? No. Want me to turn her down for you? No, I'll handle it myself. I typed out a response with careful precision. I work on Saturdays. ESL classes run from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. My students can't afford to miss class. Sent. 3 minutes later, a reply popped up. Catherine, this is more important. We can reschedule your class. My jaw clenched hard. She still didn't get it. She understood absolutely nothing. I typed back. The classes won't be rescheduled. And nothing you want to discuss is more important than my students. Blocked. Carolyn tried calling from Preston's phone. Declined. Blocked. She tried calling from Gabrielle's phone. Declined. Blocked. She tried sending an email. Subject: Business Opportunity. Ashford Foundation Collaboration. I only read the first line. Catherine, I've been thinking about how Corbett Capital could partner with Theo's foundation. The synergy would be incredible. Perhaps we could discuss this over lunch. Deleted immediately, no reply. She wanted access to Theo, his network, his funding, his influence. She still didn't care about me. All she cared about was what I could provide. Tuesday morning, September 6th. I was at my desk, helping a patron look up materials in the online catalog, when Denise walked over. Catherine, someone is here to see you. She says she's your mother. My stomach sank. Tell her I'm currently helping a student. I actually was, an 18-year-old Bangladeshi boy preparing materials for his GED. She said she can wait. I looked at the student. Give me 5 minutes to help him find what he needs, then I'll handle it. I took 10 minutes. I took my time, making sure he found everything required, walked him over to the circulation desk, and only then made my way to the lobby. Carolyn stood near the entrance in a Chanel suit and high heels, looking entirely out of place amidst the working-class families, students, and elderly Chinese patrons reading newspapers on worn sofas. Catherine, she forced a warm smile. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I'm working. I know. I see that. She glanced around at the peeling paint, the outdated carpet, and the vintage computers, unable to fully mask the disdain in her eyes. So this is, where's you work? This is where I help people. Of course I didn't mean. She paused, resetting her tone. I wanted to talk about the announcement, the grant. 50 million is a massive sum, Catherine. Truly wonderful. I was thinking Corbett Capital has extensive expertise in fund management and distribution strategies. We could assist. The mask finally slipped. No, Carolyn, the answer is no. From lunches to partnerships, calls to showing up at my workplace. I kept my voice low, icy, and strictly professional. You had 7 full years to see the value in my work, and you chose to ignore it. George, that door is closed. I am your mother. You disowned me in front of a room full of elites with a notarized legal document. When you chose humiliation over love, you stopped being my mother. Her composure shattered completely. I made a mistake. Can't you see that? What I see is a calculated decision that backfired on you. That isn't regret. George. I turned on my heel, walked back to my desk, and resumed my work. She didn't follow. 3 weeks after the dinner, on September 15th at 10 a.m., the official press conference for the Ashford Literacy Foundation took place at Queensborough Hall. Porch. 85 community members attended, students from my ESL classes, parents, teachers, local business owners, the people who actually used, loved, and relied on the library. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row with Maria Rodriguez beside her, while Mr. Park stood in the back because every seat was taken. Porch. Angela Rivera spoke first, warmly outlining the grant details, timeline, and intended impact before introducing me to the podium. Catherine Corbett Ashford has served the Queen's Public Library for 7 years, teaching ESL to over 400 students and creating literacy programs that changed countless lives. Now, she will oversee the largest library expansion project in Queen's history. I stepped up to the podium, looking out at the crowd of familiar faces, people I had helped and people who had taught me so much in return. When I chose to become a librarian, I was told I was wasting my potential, I said, making no mention of my family. There was no need to. They said books couldn't change the world. I looked at Mrs. Chen. But Mrs. Chen learned to read English, and now she reads books to her grandchildren in English. That is changing the world. I looked at Maria. Maria learned professional workplace English, earned a promotion, and can now support her daughter's education. That is changing the world. I looked at Mr. Park. Mr. Park learned to read at 68 years old, saying it gave him a voice. Porch. That is changing the world. I paused, letting the moment settle. This funding will build 3 new libraries, train 200 teachers, and expand proven educational programs. But the real transformation comes from the people who walk through our doors every day, those searching for opportunity, hope, and someone to tell them, you matter. That is the purpose of a library. We tell people they matter, regardless of income, immigration status, or educational background. Your dreams matter, your potential matters. I am deeply honored to lead this work. Thank you. Thunderous, genuine applause filled the room, not a performance, but pure gratitude. September 19th marked my first official day as Director of Community Engagement. My new office on the 3rd floor of the Queen's Central Library was small, featuring a window overlooking the street, a desk, a computer, and a phone. The $95,000 annual salary hit my account on my first payday. I stared at the number, nearly double my previous pay. While it wasn't Corbett-level wealth, it was mine, earned through my own effort. Denise knocked and brought in a cup of coffee. How does it feel? Surreal. You earned this, she set the coffee down. Every student you taught, every class, every extra hour you stayed late, helping someone fill out citizenship paperwork. This is overdue recognition for the work you've been doing all along. Thank you, Denise. After she left, I sat in my new office looking over the task list sent by Angela's team. Hire coordinators for each new branch, map out the ESL curriculum expansion, establish digital literacy labs, train educators, and build community partnerships. It was overwhelming, thrilling, intimidating, and completely perfect. October 3rd brought the grand opening of the first new branch in Jackson Heights. 320 people attended. Families, children, and elderly residents who had waited 15 years for a local library. I cut the red ribbon with giant scissors as photographers clicked away. It felt a little silly, but I couldn't stop smiling. Inside, shelves were lined with books, computers were installed, and the ESL classroom was ready. Every promise had been kept. An 8-year-old girl with dark hair tied in twin braids walked up to me, with a shy smile. Miss Catherine. I knelt down. And who are you? I'm Elena. Mrs. Chen is my grandma. I know you, Elena. Your grandma talks about you all the time. George. She handed me a folded sheet of paper. I drew this for you. Unfolding it, I found a crayon drawing labeled Family. A woman in the center was marked Miss Catherine, surrounded by stick figures labeled Grandma, Mom, Mr. Park, Maria, and me. At the bottom, written in a child's earnest handwriting, Miss Catherine, our family angel. My throat tightened. Elena, this is beautiful. George. Grandma says you're family. Even if we don't share blood, she says you love us like family. I pulled her into a tight hug. Your grandma is right. She ran back to her mother, and I folded the drawing carefully into my bag. When I got home that night, I placed it on my desk next to Theo's photo and Mrs. Chen's first thank you note. It hit me then. I had a family. George. Just not the one I was born into. And that was more than okay. November 24th was Thanksgiving at our Brooklyn apartment. We invited 12 people. Mrs. Chen's family, Maria and her daughter, Mr. Park and his son, along with 3 other ESL students. 15 people squeezed into our 480-square-foot space, laughing, eating, and filling the air with 3 different languages at once. Mrs. George. Chen brought dumplings, Maria brought tamales, and Mr. Park's son brought Korean short ribs, a chaotic perfect potluck Thanksgiving. This beats Thanksgiving at the Hamptons estate, doesn't it? Theo whispered. I laughed. By a mile. There was no enforced seating chart, no hierarchy, just people who cared for one another, sharing food, stories, and gratitude. George. Maria's daughter asked about college applications, so I sat at the kitchen table, helping her outline essays with my laptop balanced on my knees while the turkey grew cold. This was home. By February 15th of the following year, all 3 new library branches were open in Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst, serving 62,000 residents who had previously been underserved. George. I visited the Corona branch and watched a young mother teach her daughter how to use the computer catalog, saw an elderly gentleman checking out his first English book, and observed teenagers studying in the quiet rooms. The impact was tangible, real, and measurable. George. 6 months had passed with 0 messages from my biological family reaching me. I had sealed off every phone number, email, and point of contact. Through industry channels, however, I learned Corbett Capital was floundering. 2 more major investors had pulled out, profits had dropped 18%, and Preston was considering early retirement. George. Gabrielle had moved to Los Angeles to try rebuilding her influencer career, but failed completely as the video of her mocking me continued to circulate, a permanent professional stain. Carolyn once sent flowers to the library, which I immediately donated to a local nursing home. I felt no pleasure in their struggles, nor a desire for revenge. I simply felt free. George. The disownment letter remained in my desk drawer. I pulled it out occasionally, not with pain or anger, but with gratitude. It had given me permission to stop trying, stop hoping, and stop waiting for their approval. A document intended to inflict harm had ultimately delivered total liberation. I closed the drawer and smiled. George. What are you thinking about? Theo asked, walking into our small bedroom. Family? Your parents? No, real family, I said. The people who show up no matter what, who see your true worth, and who value the same things you do. He kissed my forehead. Like who? Like Mrs. Chen, Maria, Mr. Park, Elena, Denise, Angela, and you. Me? Especially you. I looked at him. George. When they were blind, you saw me. He pulled me close. I always saw the real you. They just chose not to look. We stood in our tiny apartment as Brooklyn traffic hummed outside, and the radiator clanked in the corner. A perfect, beautiful chaos. I used to think family was about blood, trust funds, Upper East Side penthouses, and knowing which fork to use at Michelin-starred restaurants. George. Now I knew better. Family was the students who sent me thank you notes, the colleagues who cheered for my success, and the husband who chose me every single day. Not for a name or connections, but for my work, my values, and simply for who I was. The disownment letter remains in my drawer, likely forever. It is no longer a scar, but a keepsake. Sometimes, the greatest gift in life is being released from people who never deserved you in the first place. And most of the time, that release is what finally allows you to find the family you were always meant to have.